Hi, my name's Laura and you're watching my channel, So Very Laura, where I chart my journey towards creating a wardrobe that makes me happy and is uniquely me. So today, as I promised in my vlog last week, I'm bringing you a little rundown of my journey of drafting my own trouser block from my measurements, my body measurements. And I did this by following along with the Sew Over It Masterclass. They have a Stitch School with masterclasses. And this is the introduction to pattern drafting for trousers. So I've got everything written down in my little notebook. So if I'm looking down, it's because I don't want to forget to tell you anything. So this masterclass is currently retailing for £50, or you can get it included in their Stitch School subscription, where you pay, I think it's £15 a month, and then you get access to all their tutorials and masterclasses. I'm not a member of their Stitch School, but I bought this masterclass when it was on sale. I think it was the Christmas before last. And I got it for, I've checked back, and I got it for £40. It was 20% off at the time in a sale. And I also got their masterclass around fitting and sewing jeans. So I've yet to try that one. And the other thing I would like to say at the outset is that I don't know what I did. I think I hit purchase twice or something. Somehow I managed to order the masterclasses twice. So I emailed them and explained, and they were fantastic, and they refunded it really quickly. So really, really good customer service from Sew Over It there. So that was very impressive. So what I thought I'd do is I'll talk you through the process, and I'll try to show you bits along the way. I'm sitting well over in my sewing room so that I've got room to put in photographs and video clips, but I'll also try to show you the toiles as we go along as well, and some of the paper patterns. I'll tell you now, if you like those videos, which I quite like actually, the auto meridian sensory response videos, ASMR, where there's lots of rustling, you will love this, because I have my paper patterns, she says, whispering. So yeah, so there may be a bit of rustling going on as I show you the paper patterns, but hopefully it won't be too distracting. So obviously, because I was doing this by drafting according to my measurements, I've got them here. What they give you is a little chart that you can follow and take your body measurements. But they do also go over this in the video. So it's a video and then some supporting materials. So I actually followed my followed along with the video, took the measurements, and then in the video they also say, for example, at this point add on e.g. for the crotch depth 2 centimeters of ease. So you're doing the maths as you go along. And I got my lovely husband to measure me, which was much easier. So I'll pop a pic in of hubby here, because I think he deserves a lot of thanks for this, because he took my measurements and he also helped me fit the toile later on in the process. So huge thanks to him. But one of the things that is really good about the Sew Over It class is they do have some tips on how to measure yourself if you are trying to do this on your own, because obviously if you're trying to take measurements on the lower half of your body, if you keep bending down to do it, it can throw the measurements out of kilter. So I was lucky because I had someone, but if you're on your own when you do this, there are hints and tips to help you. So I thought that was really good and well thought out. So you take all your measurements. What I would say is that the actual grid doesn't directly match the measurements that you take and then subsequently use. So for example, on here, you've got your front mid-thigh arc and your back mid-thigh arc, and it tells you to add ease to them, but you never actually use those. So yeah, I was a bit confused by that, but on the whole, fine. So you take all your measurements, and then the next step is to transfer that onto drafting paper. So I will just pause this, and then I'll pick up my drafting paper and I will show you what I mean. Okay, so I'm back and I have picked up my first rustly piece of pattern. So what you do is you draft out your pattern, and you actually do this with no seam allowances on it. So this is the size of the block with your measurements, but no seam allowance. The piece of paper I'm showing you is actually the back, and I'm doing that because it's the piece I made least alterations to after my first toile. One of the things that's quite difficult in the video, the masterclasses, you never see a final completed version of the trousers at any point. You see people from Sew Over It being fitted based on their toile, but you never see the end result, and you never see a line drawing. So that is a bit tricky because you can't kind of decide if it looks like it's meant to a degree. It's not easy. But anyway, the way the pattern works is it starts off, it has 2 darts in the front at each side of the centre front, and the same on the back. So you can see I've drawn my darts in. So the way it has you do it is you draw out your pattern pieces and you actually draw them out next to each other. So you can see there, for example, can you see there where it says crotch? You've got the crotch line going right across your piece of paper, and so that's why it's cut off when I've cut it out. And so each of the measurements that you've taken will equate to different lines on here. So you can see there's one that goes, obviously the top one goes all the way from your waist down to kind of just past your ankle, and then that forms the grain line. But each of the various points is then given a letter. And so it's kind of like join this point to this point, join this point to this point, and then draw your crotch curve from this point to this point. And it's actually pretty easy to follow. And obviously, because it's a video, you can keep pausing it. So you draw all that out. And I actually quite enjoyed the process. It's quite relaxing. Becca, who does it, is super clear. So yeah, that's all great. So you draw that out, and I would say, you know, there is a bit of trial and error, and she's very honest about that. So when you're drawing your crotch curve, you know, you might do it using, I can never remember what they're called, you know, you can have French curves and stuff, and I have got some of those. But she also says, look, it's fine, you can do it freehand, and obviously do it in pencil, and just take your time over it, and if you're not happy, rub it out, redo it. So all that is great. And so you draw out your front and your back. And then what you do is you create your first toile. And obviously, in order to do that, you cut these out. But what you have to remember to do is when you put them onto your fabric, you need to allow a seam allowance, and you can allow whatever seam allowance you want to do it. So I did 5/8 of an inch, I think, or 1.5 centimetres, but you could do less. So I'll pause this again and I'll get you my toile so you can see it. Okay, so I'm back with my toile, and I will also put some videos in a minute here of me twizzling round in the toile. And I was wrong earlier, there's only 1 dart each side of the centre line. So the way that I've got this at the moment, you can see I've basted everything. I think, yes, even including the darts I basted. So there's the back, so you can see the darts are basted in. And then what you do is you try it on inside out, so you've got all your seams showing, so that if you need to unpick anything, and in fact I did need to unpick something, which I'll come to in a minute, you can do it easily with your seam ripper and you're not having to take them off and mess around. So the other thing that they get you to do, so you've added on your seam allowance, and then what you do when you are tracing this out, you also mark on, can you see there, I've written mid-thigh, so you mark on the lines. So there's your hip, there's my hip line, there's my mid-thigh line, there's the grain line which you mark on, so that when you're trying it on you can see if that's skewed at all or if it's hanging straight, because it should be hanging straight. I've got the knee on there somewhere. Where's my knee? There's my knee, and my ankle is just down there somewhere. Okay, so this was just made in the lining of the curtains that I used when I did my collaboration with Jess for a jacket. So it's just plain cotton. It's distinctly manky. I wouldn't have made anything else with it. You can see where it's gone a bit hideous there. But for a toile, it was fine. So what I'll do now is I will talk you through how I found the toile and the way that they show you how you can alter your toile to fit you. So here is the first video of me in the toile before I started doing anything about the fit. Okay. So let me just check my notes to make sure I don't forget anything. I actually was quite impressed because I didn't think it was too bad, given that this was just taken straight from my measurements and drawn as per their instructions. You can see that it is, I think, too big on the legs, on the seams, and you can see I'm pulling it out on the video to show you that. That being said, of course, I don't know how wide really they intended them to be, because I didn't see a line drawing, and there aren't any. Obviously, there aren't any finished garment measurements because it's done to your own body size. So when they show you how to fit the toile, what they do is they have videos of 3 people from Sew Over It. They have Becca, who's been doing the drafting out, and 2 other people. So they've sewn the toile following the same process that I did with the measurements. And then they show you where they think they need to alter their toiles, and they show you how to do it. And again, there is this emphasis on it needing to be a bit of trial and error, and there's a lot of emphasis on just play around with it until you're happy, which is kind of okay, but it kind of doesn't feel that okay if the changes that you think you might need aren't covered there. And I know that Becca had felt that the sides of her trousers were too big, so they just pinned them in, which is what I did, and you'll see that in a minute, because they were too wide, I think, on the legs for me. But then I felt that it was too loose on the crotch, and I couldn't see anything that addressed that in the vlogs that I was watching. So I was thinking, oh goodness, there's just nothing else. Now that actually isn't true. What they have is a paper accompaniment to the videos, and one of them is called Fitting Guide, and it goes through and it does all sorts of things like you know, flat bottom adjustment. It talks about having a loose crotch, so that was the problem for me. But what I saw in the fitting guide for Sew Over It, it was suggesting that I shorten the crotch seam. So if I show you on this is actually the back again, but pretend this is the front, because it was the front that was the problem. What they were suggesting was that I needed to take that bit off there, and I didn't feel that that was right, because it felt like it fitted in terms of where the front joined the back, and I didn't think that that was right. Now, as it happens, the Stitch Sisters also have a trouser fitting course, which I'd also bought when it was on sale, so I'll pop the link to that down below, and that's £35. So I had a look at that, and their advice for a loose crotch in the way that I felt I'd got it, so sort of too much fabric pooling, was actually different. So they suggested I needed also, it was called a loose crotch adjustment, but basically, if I show you, I'll show you the front now. If I show you on here, you can just about hopefully see, and I'll pop a photo in as well. That was my original crotch curve there. And what you can see is that I've attached an extra piece of paper on, and I've redrawn it, because the way that the Stitch Sisters describe it is what you need to do is you need to add more fabric and take away the negative ease, because you've got too much space, so you need a shallower crotch curve, and that's why the fabric's pooling. So you need a crotch curve that fits you better, that's shallower, and you need the extra space, because obviously then you're going to have to add your seam line on top. So that's what I did, rather than follow the take a chunk out of here, which is what I would have done had I followed the Sew Over It one. And I think that worked well, as you'll see in the second toile. So I'll pop in a quick video here of how we pinned it. So again, long-suffering husband had pinned the first toile, and so the second video here is just me trying to show the pinning that we'd done, and then I went back and transferred these changes onto the block. So this is the block, and again the instructions from Sew Over It were really clear about how you did these kinds of things. So for the crotch one, I did actually follow the instructions from the Stitch Sisters, because obviously I was making the change that I found on their video and not one that I'd found in the Sew Over It guide. But in terms of doing the adjustments to the sides, what you can see, where you can just see, hopefully that it's in blue, is where I retrace the legs, and you can probably see, hopefully it goes all the way down there and all the way down to the ankle, in fact. And so I did it on the inside leg as well. So I just took off what I needed on the seams, and then I adjusted those, and obviously I did the back to match, and that was the only adjustment I made at all on the back. So actually I did the adjustment to the crotch and did the adjustments to the legs, and that's all I did for the first toile. However, sorry, lots and lots of rustling going on. You then need to create your trouser pattern with your seam allowances and your hem on it. So it suggests that you go around and retrace your pattern, which I did. So to minimise rustling, I will just pause it and then get those pieces to show you. Okay, so here we go. So what I'm showing you now is the revised back. So this has now got the changes that I showed you a minute ago put onto the back, and you can see that I've drawn in my seam allowance, and Becca talks you all the way through all that, and also suggests that you put in notches to help you sew up your final version of your trousers. Of course, you might at this point choose to remake a toile just with exactly the same process as the first time, i.e. just put it onto the fabric again with seam allowance. I didn't, because I kind of thought the fit was good enough that I wanted to try and sew it up properly with the zip in it, because the trousers have got a zip at the right hip, and I just got my husband to pin me into the trousers when I did the fitting, and I wanted to see what it was like with the zip. And I had bought some fabric which was basically a duvet cover for £3.50 from a charity shop. So I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to have a go with the zip, and I'm going to make a wearable toile, and if it doesn't work, I've lost £3.50. If it does work, great, I've got a pair of summer trousers. So you can see that that's the back, and the darts are in there still, and you've got those bits that kind of stick out. Right, so that's the back. Let me show you the front, because at this point you either create for your trousers a facing, or you can do a waistband, and I chose to do the waistband. So you get good clear instructions on the video about how to create your waistband. So you get all the bits about measurements and where you need to add the seam allowances, and they're cut on the fold, so you can see you add the seam allowances at the front and the back, at the top and the bottom, and at the side seam, but you're not adding it obviously there. And you can pick your the length of your the height of your waistband as well, and that's the same for the centre front. But in doing this, you obviously you'd started out with your toile hitting at your natural waist, so you obviously need to take something off the front of the original trouser pattern. So when I had done that, what actually happened was that it made that dart so small that it wasn't worth keeping it in, so that just went out basically. So you can see that's why that has been amended down. You just see where the dart was, but it came out. So don't have that dart on the front, but it didn't really make a huge difference to the fit. And then the rest of it is just as I showed you for the back. One thing that I found incredibly useful while I was doing all this, both while I was doing the toile straight onto the fabric and also while I was creating the new pattern, is the seam circles by Generate. So they come in little boxes like this. And I know I've shown you before, but if you've not been watching me very long, you may not have seen my video where I talked about them. So what they are is like loads and loads of concentric circles, but the 1.5 centimetre one actually stands alone. And you've got one for a small, something like a propelling pencil or something would fit in that gap, and a bigger pen or a normal pencil would fit in that. And what you do is you put your pencil in there and you line up the edge of this with your sewing line, and that creates a seam line, which is always going to be the right distance apart as long as you keep that lined up. And it saves so much time. It really does, particularly going around the curves. So I've got them in centimetres and I've got another box of them in inches. So yeah, can really, really recommend Generate. So I'll link her down below as well. So that was all the pattern drafting. And again, I would say the Sew Over It tutorial was really good in terms of how you do that. And then you got on to sewing up the trousers and putting in the waistband and everything. There are some instructions. What I would say is, if you've not sewn trousers before, and I haven't really, not kind of fitted trousers. I've done dungarees and I've done PJs, but I hadn't really done fitted trousers before because I'd always wanted to try and do the block so that I can compare that against patterns. So I didn't find it that easy, and when it came to sewing the zip in with the waistband, I actually ended up going back to the instructions in the Tilly and the Buttons Love at First Stitch book so that I could use her instructions for the Delphine skirt, and I also used the Tomcat Stitchery tutorial around an invisible zip because I've put an invisible zip in mine. So let me just show you. I am actually wearing them, but I have also taken some footage. But just to show you, if I tilt the camera down slightly, there you go. So I am actually wearing them. There's my zip. Made a bit of a haulix of the top of it. And interestingly, if you look at the Tomcat Stitchery video, she says she doesn't think waistbands and invisible zips really go together, and you're better stopping it there, extending your waistband and putting on something like a hook and eye fastening. And I think if I did this again, that is what I would do. But yep, you can see I've got them on. My personal thought is that the waistband might be a bit too high. It is faced and it's interfaced, or I think one of them. I think I interfaced the waistband but not the facing. So I am wearing them. You can't see very much of them, but I have taken some video of what they look like. So I shall sit back down. Top, incidentally, is Tilly and the Buttons Nora, made in fleece, and I have made loads of these and I love them. And so what do I think of the second toile, which wearable toile, which I am twirling around in here? So actually I think it's pretty good. I'm pleased because I think the legs have come in nicely. Whether this is the best style for me, I don't know. I know that I am quite pear-shaped, and I don't know, I could maybe do with slightly looser trouser legs. But, you know, I did this to try to get a trouser block, and I actually think they're probably all right. I would never really wear them with the t-shirt tucked in. Incidentally, I hope you can read what the t-shirt says. I think it's fantastic. It's Tinkerbell, and it says mood subject to change without notice, and sometimes you just feel like that, don't you? So, but I've tucked it in just so you can see the whole of the trousers. I might need to lengthen the back crotch line ever so slightly because I think the waistband does dip a bit. But equally, I would be half tempted to try and sew them up next time with a facing if I do them again, just to see if that's any better, because I think the waistband feels a bit high on me, or I'd have to take more out of the trousers and adjust. And the only other thing, when I first put them on, I thought they might be a bit tight around the bum, but actually when I put them on again today, they feel okay. They feel absolutely fine. And I got my husband to zoom in, sorry about that, getting shots of my bum, but I think actually they're all right. I still think there's a bit of loose fabric somewhere kind of round the tops of my hips, sort of basically hip line. So what I've done is on a second video, which I'll pop in here, I've tried clipping it to see if that really makes too much difference. I can still sit down comfortably, so I could take a little bit of the fabric out there. Whether it's worth worrying, I don't know. Funnily enough, I thought it was going to make a difference, and then when I watched this video, I think that the bit where there aren't any clips looks perfectly fine. So I could maybe take a couple of centimetres of fabric out of there at the centre seam and then taper it away to nothing at the hip, but I don't know. And the only other thing is that actually, although I did add on length for the hem, what I've done at the moment is just overlock them. And I think if I make them again, I would lengthen them. I'd probably lengthen them by another, probably 3 centimetres, so that they come to where they are now when they're not hemmed, because I think that's about the right length for me. So I'm debating about whether or not to lock these off so they look like capri pants and it looks a bit more intentional than having trousers that are just overlocked. So yeah, that's the only other thing that I might do if I were to make them again. Am I going to make them again? I think I'll probably come back to this, but the only thing I would say is that they kind of feel a little bit loose around the waist. And I think, although I haven't been making a huge effort to lose weight, I got my husband to measure me somewhere around the Christmas period, and I think I might have lost a little bit since then, although very annoyingly I tried to put on my me-made denim skirt the other day and it didn't fit me, it was too tight. I got into it, but it wasn't comfortable and it was making dodgy noises around the fastening, so I took it off. So maybe I'm losing a little bit of weight, maybe I'm not, but I'm going to wait. So some of the things, because I've got lots of exciting things coming up on the channel and just in my sewing journey generally in the next couple of months. And then what I'll probably do is try these on again when it gets nearer summer, and see how I feel in them then, and then make a decision about what alterations I do and don't need and give them a go maybe with the facing. So yeah, so that's it. So I suppose the final question is, would I recommend the masterclass? And I think the answer is I would, but with reservations. I think sometimes the instructions are a little bit sparse. Sometimes they don't always quite make sense. They're slightly contradictory, like I said about the measurements. And I think certainly it would be useful to have instructions about how to sew trousers with a waistband or a facing next to you, so that you've got additional help on the sewing techniques if you aren't familiar with doing it. To be fair, it's not a course about sewing up trousers, it's a course about fitting trousers. And I think in terms of if you want to learn how to follow the process and get basic ideas about ease, it's great. I was actually, sometimes I overestimated the amount of ease I needed. So sometimes Becca would say, for this, depending on how, whether you consider that you're going to be at the top end of the scale in terms of needing ease or lower down the scale. And I think this is why the legs turned out wide. I overestimated. So it was useful to know that and to kind of get a sense of how much ease I do need in those areas of my body. So I would recommend it for that. I think if you want to really learn how to fit trousers, again, I think it might be useful to have a second resource as well. If you would like me to do a proper review of the Stitch Sisters trouser fitting guide, I will do that for you, or any of the other ones that I own. So I've got shirt making, introduction to dressmaking, and all about sleeves, and something else, overlocker and cover stitch, I think. So I've got quite a few of them. So if you want me to review any of those, very happy to do so. I love their stuff generally, that's why I bought so many, but I haven't delved into the trouser fitting one at all yet, really. I just literally went to the crotch adjustments and thought, I think that's what I need, rather than the shortening the crotch line. So yeah, so that's it for now. I hope you found this useful and helpful, and you've enjoyed my insight into my journey of trouser fitting. So I will see you again very soon. I'm going to embark on my pogo nip over this weekend, but I wanted to film this and get this out to you before I start doing that. So I hope you've all had a lovely week. I hope you all have a good weekend and you find some time for sewing. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give me a thumbs up. Let me know whether you want to try and do trouser fitting. Please do subscribe if you'd like to hear more from me, and click the little notification bell if you want to be notified when my videos come out. Thanks for watching. Bye.